Hello everyone, it's Jonny Khatru, and in this video I'll be listening to Fragments, the debut album from this new supergroup called Trifecta. Trifecta is Nick Beggs on bass guitar, Adam Holzman on keyboards, and Craig Blundell on drums. And they came together the same way that I first heard them myself, playing as a part of Steven Wilson's solo band. In fact, Holzman and Beggs in particular have been playing with Steven Wilson since he began doing solo shows back in 2011. And when I would see the Steven Wilson band live, which I have done many times over the years, the performances of these musicians would often be one of the major things to look forward to as part of the show. Craig Blundell joined them on drums comparatively more recently, at a time when Steven's music was in transition away from the progressive jazz rock he was doing more a decade ago and more into pop rock song-based territory. So of course I'm assuming that this band has been formed as a way for these guys to let out more of their jazz fusion tendencies. And apparently work for this new material began when these guys would jam before or after rehearsals for the Steven Wilson band. So I'm pretty excited to hear what the guys have come up with, especially from Blundell, who we haven't heard in the jazz fusion context quite as much as we have the other guys. So do me a favor and click the like button on this video and let's get into this. Track 1 is called Clean Up on Aisle 5. Whew, what a start. We're straight back in the territory of Adam Holzman's piano, mellotron, lead synthesizer combinations. All those sounds that were always such a joy to hear from Holzman on those early Steven Wilson tours. And this track was a really cool combination of tense, dissonant moments and huge chord changes that really opened everything up. They kicked things straight off with a 5/8 rhythm, immediately trying to bend our minds. And as I would expect, the performances are top notch. On to track 2. It's called Check Engine Light. So the bass guitar sound on that one was giving me more of a 80s vibe. And if you don't know, Nick Beggs was actually the bassist and sometimes lead singer of 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐿. So it goes without saying that he's a master of those kinds of 80s synthpop inspired sounds. But of course, this is putting it straight into more of a jazz fusion direction. And wasn't that just groovy as hell? Really easy to enjoy, constantly funky, but with a hint of melancholy in the writing as well, which keeps things pretty interesting. Track 3 is called Proto Molecule. Okay, some pretty interesting ideas going on in there with the distorted drums that came in and out, but mostly we had more classic jazz fusion sounds. Some gorgeous bass playing from Nick Beggs, bass pops and harmonics abound. And the synth sounds that Adam Holzman was using was taking me right back to early 90s video games that I loved in my youth. Next song, track 4, is called Auntie. Right, so we're staying in that more 80s sounding fusion sound. And it seems I should expect this to be the more dominant sound on the album, since everything from track 2 onwards so far has had that sound, which is fine. Although this particular song did have an element of darkness to it, which I found pretty appealing. There was some tasty drumming from Blundell around the midpoint of the track. Sounds great. On to track 5, it's called Venn Diagram. Okay, so there was a synth sound in this song that did not work for me at all. It was the stab sound that he was using at the start and the end. Just sounds a bit too Van Halen jump to me, if you know what I mean. But once the middle part came in, the piano sounded fantastic. And then the real highlight of this track began, the drums. Some absolutely fantastic drum fills going on there. So yeah, that one was a bit of a mixed bag for me, but it definitely had some instrumental chops for me to enjoy that I loved. The next song, track 6, is called The Enigma of Mr. Fripp. Okay, so I see why they name dropped Fripp in the title for that one. You know, it was based around a guitar lick that definitely could have been played by Fripp himself. And in fact, no guitar player is listed on this album, so who was playing that guitar? Fripp? Or perhaps they sampled Fripp from somewhere? If anyone knows, let us know in the comments. I thought this track was pretty good. Just okay, really. Some amazing drumming again. Blundell is really impressing at this point in the album. But I feel like they could have done a bit more with this song compositionally. Not bad though. The next one is track 7 and it's called Sally Do Lally. No, Sally Do Dally. Okay, somewhat bluesy vibe on that one with some swing in the beat. This one could be a soundtrack for a city street in Final Fantasy VIII. Some more really impressive drumming and overall groovy stuff, but once again, I'm left a little bit unsatisfied by the composition. It's just alright. Next one is track 8 and it's called Have You Seen What the Neighbours Are Doing? So I was happy to hear more of a chaotic vibe coming from this one after the last track. Lots of strange dark sounds all over the place, some tonal chromatic movements, and every now and then an electronic beat would come in inexplicably. I wonder whether Craig is using electronic drums in his kit or if they're using a drum machine additional to the drums. Either way, it sounds cool as hell. The next song, track 9, is called The Mute Gospel. I wonder if that has anything to do with Nick Beggs' other band, the Mute Gods. Let's see. Okay, so obviously that was using more of a gospel chord progression and feel. Even the Hammond organ reinforcing that vibe. Honestly, it doesn't do too much for me though. I mean, once again, the playing's fantastic as it has been throughout the whole album so far, but let's see what track 10 has to offer. It's called Pavlov's Dog Killed Schrodinger's Cat.
Science appeal, but the light is a wave.
Okay, so this one had a pretty unique atmosphere, sounded pretty cool, and some unexpected vocals from Nick Beggs. In a way, I kind of wonder why we didn't get more vocals on this album from Nick, but on the other hand, I did find this song to be a bit underwhelming. Some of the lyrics were quite funny and did sort of maintain my interest, but on the whole, I just felt the song was a bit forgettable, and it just feels so low-key compared to the intensity that the rest of the album is providing. I don't know if it deserves to really be the longest song on the album. It's not exactly much of a centerpiece. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what they were going for with that one. Maybe they just had this nice song and thought it would break up the consistent intensity, which I suppose it probably does. Let's move on to track 11. It's called Voyage of Discovery. All right. Back to the more mysterious sounding jazz fusion that these guys are the masters of. And that track had all three of them playing to their strengths. We had fantastic drumming, groovy bass playing, and some really nice keyboard solos as well. That's exactly what I want to hear. On to track 12. It's called Nightmare in Shining Armor. Oh, well, I really liked how that one came in. You know, you can tell it was clipped from a longer improvisation. I love that feeling that it's all spontaneous, that we're only hearing the strongest fragment, perhaps. But this one was very short. It's a shame we couldn't have heard a bit of what came before, I suppose. Next song is track 13. It's called Dry Martini. Really cool ambient percussion in that one. In fact, I enjoyed the more ambient approach of that song. It was a nice contrast to most of the rest of the album. A little bit of a Nine Inch Nails vibe in some of the choice of synthesizers and electronic percussion sounds. Especially if you've heard Nine Inch Nails' most recent ambient albums, you'll know what I mean. There was a bit more guitar in this one, or sounded like guitar. Perhaps it's just really high notes on the Chapman stick. Sounds pretty cool anyway. On to track 14. It's called Lie to Me and Take My Money. Oh yeah. We like that groovy and dark sound. I especially enjoyed the descent into noise that they did a couple times in this track. It was a really cool contrast against the more funky sections of the song. Worked really well, I thought. And that just leaves us with the last song, track 15. It's called Hold It Like That. Okay, that last song worked pretty well as a final track. A somewhat epic vibe in the chords that were being played. Although I have to say I can't shake the feeling that I would have liked something bigger. And I suppose that has a lot to do with how I feel about the album as a whole. I kind of knew what to expect going into this album, you know. They framed it as three musicians coming together, showing their improvisations that they would do. And as I would hope, there were plenty of demonstrations of their incredible musicianship. And we got to hear all those wonderful sounds that all three of them are really known for. And I certainly did enjoy it for that. And the title of the album being Fragments, I think it's pretty clear that what's happened here is they've recorded lengthy improvisations and then they've cut out the parts that they felt made for the strongest moments. But I think that this approach of just cutting out 2 or 3 minute sections of improvisations didn't entirely work for me because it meant that every part that we heard wasn't entirely satisfying. I can't help but wonder if it would have been better just to hear some of the stronger complete improvisations, even if it meant some parts that were less exciting than others. When you would hit those exciting parts, it would feel meaningful, more meaningful than it does feel on the album anyway. But yeah, I did know what I was getting into with this album, and I would say it more or less delivered on that. And I was pretty well engaged for the majority of the album. It definitely kept things interesting, with a couple of exceptions like the vocal track, which didn't really work for me, and some of the more bluesy and gospel moments, which honestly I felt didn't work. But other than that, we had plenty of moments of intensity, darkness, a little bit of noise here and there, and I got so much out of those parts. And it definitely did scratch the itch that I've had ever since hearing these guys play on those early Steven Wilson tours, to hear more of their incredible playing and that atmosphere that only they can conjure up, I believe. So if you've enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me with the link in the description to buy me a coffee. I'll really appreciate it because it helps me to keep making these videos, help me keep my channel going. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take it easy.